Watch how my daddy built this Regal Contemporary office.
Yay! Well done, mate. So you did hear that right. Contemporary Regal is the term I'm going to coin for this project. It's the only two words I can think to describe it, because it's a bit of a mix of old and modern, and I think it looks beautiful. Well, the finished product will, not what I'm showing you right now. So just a reminder, this is the second part of this project. The first one, I'll just put a screenshot up now for you to see the thumbnail of the previous video if you want to find that elsewhere on my channel. If I can link it and work out how to do that, I will. But this is the room and how it started. This is the end of the living space, which was a very long room. We didn't need it to be this big, so we sectioned it off with a nice stud wall. Here's the first video showing you what I've done to the ceiling, which is to separate it with 60cm gaps, because I'm going to put something fancy on the ceiling that's 60cm square. You could probably guess what it is. So the center line is this one, but I'm not actually separating them there. I'm going to do that as the center of the first one. That's going to be the center line. I've calculated from the center line that that light that was already there is not central. So that is going to be central for the new black spotlight that we've got, which has got loads of other lights coming off it. And then over here, I've worked out the center of what is going to be on the ceiling. That square is very important because that is exactly the center of the new, shall we say, tile. And then the same over here. We've got another one just over here, and that'll be the same as well. So the electricians know exactly where to wire everything as per where I need it. And then once it's done, we can start on the ceiling, I think. Oh, by the way, I took the architrave off as well. Is it architrave? What's it called? Picture frame, whatever it is. There we go, it's off. So the first job for today is going to be to paint the surround of the window, not the PVC, but the surround. There's vinyl that's going to be covering this to make it look like wood. So I want to do that black with gloss. I'm just going to do the edges at the moment, so then we can think about the slat wall. Can worry about the inside later. And I'm going to spray all the way round the coving. But I can't do that until this wall is on. So we need acoustic insulation in here, which I've purchased. I also need the plasterboard on the top. Then we can put the coving on. Then we can spray the ceiling and the coving. Then we can put the tile on the ceiling and paint around the surround. Finished. So lots to do, but there's a particular order. So let's see how we get on with this first part. So I spent a few £100 on rock wool insulation, which is acoustic. Again, this is not an insulation designed for retaining heat because both of the rooms are the same temperature. It doesn't need to do that. It's just to prevent the sound travelling through and causing any kind of echo, etc. So what I did was I bought the stuff that was 4 inches thick. That way it fit through the 4x2s lovely, and it meant that there was a nice flat surface to be able to plasterboard straight over the top without having to squish it too much. I haven't done any footage of the plasterboarding because I figured you guys have seen me do that in the previous video. As you've seen, there's a link to that if you want to watch the previous video as well, if you haven't already. But the good thing about this plasterboard was that I didn't have to do any jointing because it was all going to be covered up with slat wall later. Again, I'd be able to screw straight into it as well. And because both sides were done, I was then able to do the inside of the door. So all of my equipment in the office is covered with dust sheets. I've also put material sheets on the floor. This is a bit of an odd one for me because I don't normally make my workplace look like a scene from Dexter. But I will say that it's worthwhile because at least it means I won't get any paint on my floor, which is really important. So here we go. Let's see if we can make this look black. Let's give this a go, shall we? Nervous. Right. Of course, I had every right to be nervous here because they say once you've sprayed it black, you can't go back. Or I think that's the phrase anyway. I'll explain first of all, though, why did I paint this black? So there's two reasons. One, I don't want a white cove all the way around the ceiling when everything else is going to be black. So that was the obvious reason for the coving. But I did do the ceiling as well. Now, the reason is the tile is black. And you don't want to put black tiles on a white ceiling because no matter how hard you try, especially when sticking to an Artex ceiling as I am doing, you're never going to get it completely flush. So I figured if there are any gaps between the tiles, at least it won't stand out. You'll just be able to see black underneath and therefore it'll hide the seams a little bit better. Here I'm just showing you the full ceiling with the black coving and ceiling done together. It was just standard Dulux paint that I used, about 20 quid for 2.5 litres, and yeah, very pleased. Now, the tiles were from Amazon. They were £120 I think in total, and they just cut with a pair of scissors. And I'll be honest, when this was done, this was one of my favourite parts of the room. Look at that. Look how regal that looks. So beautiful, so fancy, and over the moon with it. Really pleased with that ceiling. This is radiator paint by Polar. Apparently it's already got the primer in it, so you don't need to worry about doing that. Have given it a quick sand, hopefully to just help with the adhesion of the paint. So let's give this a whirl. So here's me using the product, and I must say that contrary to previous versions of this that I've used before that didn't have the primer in, this one went on so well and does not scratch off. You can scratch at it with your fingers and it just doesn't come off like previous ones that I've tried. So really nice, and when it was finished, basically just made the radiator black without having to swap it out. I have this vinyl wrap, which is like a wood effect. So we're going to change it from a horrible crappy white windowsill to something that looks a little bit more rustic. This unfortunately isn't long enough to go all the way to the very end there. It does reach all the way to the end here, but then what I'm going to do is the offcut that will be the black part here, I'll just reuse it and hopefully you won't notice the join. So let's see how we get on with that. So the secret to putting this on well is using one of these little squeegee tools. Some of the companies will throw one in. If not, you can use your credit card, your driver's license, maybe your old Blockbuster video card if you've still got one knocking about. But yeah, that's all you need to get the air bubbles out. After wrestling with it for a little bit, this is what it looks like. So we've gone for the rustic wood effect, which does actually look real. I'm really impressed with this actually. And the black radiator, which we did earlier as well. So I think that looks really lovely now. And when the slat wall's on, it's going to look fabulous. Next up, I needed to put some shelves. I used old scaffold boards that we were gifted here, but they'd been left on a building site for some time, so I had to start by jet washing all of the old mud and concrete and stuff off them, let them dry for a few days in the lovely weather that we've had recently, and then cut them to size. So here's me showing you in the most animated way I could imagine how I tend to put stain onto wood. So what I'll do is I'll put a glove, and I pinch these from the petrol station, I'll be honest. And then you just put a sock over the top of your hand. This is also great for doing railings on your stairs, by the way. And then you can either pour the stuff into your hand or pour it straight onto the wood, and all you'll have to do is just rub it in. Now, because the wood here had dried out, it was very thirsty. And I noticed that, you know, basically trying to do it whilst it was leaning up against the wall, which I'd covered, you see, with a bit of paper there, it was just taking too long. So instead, I laid down, and this worked much better. And as you can see, this is a colour called walnut. It didn't look very walnutty, but it did look lovely. So yeah, the finished product, again, I just wanted something that looked quite rustic. So what I did was I covered it all up with this stuff all the way around. I then gave it a nice sand, and then I did it again. So 2 coats of this stain, and the finished product turned out lovely. So the electricians have been back this morning. They fitted us a loft light, and they've also put my lovely little spots in, which are going to be used for accent lighting, on there. And there's one on this side as well, which looks lovely. Do you want to switch that on? And that's our other spot. Turn it back off. It's a bit bright, but that's the other spot there. You happy, babe? Makes a fucking change. So I've decided to do shelves here, which I'm going to use scaffold boards for. What I've done is I have traced around one of these and then offset it, if you can see. So I've cut it back because when the slat wall's on, I don't want this to be visible, so it'll just be that protrudes out instead. So all I did was multi-tooled, cut round, and then just traced through the little holes for screwing, if you can pick those up, and then just put a spirit level across and worked out where the next one needed to be. Did that, and then took the distance from the top and to the floor, and from this one to the coving, and just copied it on this side. Did the exact same thing. So those are ready for slat wall. So as you can see, I've started putting up the black slat wall on this wall over here. Forgot to record the very beginning bit, but what I'm going to do now is put another piece up, and I'm quite looking forward to this one because it's going to cover up the channeling from the new wiring and sockets that we had put in during the rewire very recently. So this will, I literally just figured I'm just going to stick it straight over the top because there's no reason to then pack this out, to sand it, to do anything. You're never going to see it. So I'm literally just going to put screws either side of this to make sure that this is firmly in place. And yeah, I think that will work absolutely fine for covering this horrible mess up. So let's see how we get on. I mentioned in a previous video that I still like to do a lot of cutting with a handsaw. Nothing wrong with using a circular saw. I just prefer to use old-fashioned tools. That's how I was brought up and shown by my dad to do these things. So I still do it the old-fashioned way, and you know, whichever's easiest for you. So as long as you've got a fine-tooth saw, you should be able to cut through this slat wall. It's 240 centimetres and I needed 233. So here's me taking 7 centimetres off the bottom, which is a real pain in the arse. But slowly but surely cutting through to make sure that it was nice and flat, and then just balanced it on top of the skirting that was there. So this slat wall was purchased from British Homes Direct, which the product is fantastic. The company themselves are quite frustrating to deal with. I've used them twice with slat wall for this room. But however, what they recommend is to just pop a load of no more nails, and apparently that's adequate. What I can tell you is that is not the case. You cannot stick up a 5 to 8 kilo in weight slat wall just using glue. In my experience, you always are going to need screws as well. Now, companies like Tray Panel will tell you to use 20 screws per panel. I think that's excessive. What I tend to do is put about 4 screws, 2 at the top either side, 2 at the bottom, and then use the glue in between. And hopefully then you don't have any screw lines, screws in your eye line, if that makes sense. It makes them a little bit less visible. Use plasterboard screws as well. Because they're black, they see into the felt, they kind of hide it a lot better. But yeah, use about 1 tube of no more nails per panel, and that's plenty. And then a few screws top and bottom as well is my recommendation to you. See how you get on. Progress my side. Ceiling. Progress Kerry's side. So all we have left to do now, change the desks, because white desks ain't going to work in here, are they? I'm going to go rustic, just like this windowsill that I've put in. And we're going to change this wall. Plus there's another little secret that's coming, but you'll see. I'll tell you, I'll go on there. So it's looking lovely, but can always be improved, as you know. So we have a little bit more progress in the new office space. I bought us both a new desk, and these ones are what they call standing desks. So press a button on it, that's at the height. That one will reduce it down, so when you want to sit at your desk, it brings the desk down to your level. So I'm just moving everything so it's where I want it to be. And then the idea is that once it's at level 2, which is 73 centimetres from the floor, and I say, oh, I want it to stand, press this. 98 is, I found, the best height. And that will push it back up, and then I can stand up and do my work standing up, so not constantly having to sit down all day. So I bought us one of those each. She hasn't seen it yet, and I think she's going to like it. The next job today is to sort out the bottom of the skirting. As you can see, when I've painted this with the eggshell gloss, there has been some drips. So what I'm going to do is not only cover that up, but also hide the joint between the flooring. This is the existing flooring, and whatever the hell they've used to fill the space. Looks like some cork or something. And I've bought some what they call beading. So I'm just going to stick that on there, see how that goes, and that should just make it look nice and sharp. So beading is very popular product. It's very cheap as well. I think I paid about £20 for 5 lengths of this stuff, which was sufficient to get all the way around the room. It's best stuck down with some no more nails. But what I tend to do, just because it always ends up bowing a little bit, is just to tack it down with a few little nails as well. You don't need many. I think I used one at each end and a couple equally spaced along there, just to hold it in place whilst the glue goes off. And the end result is a really nice sharp line all the way around the room, which just looks really smart. As you can see, annoyingly, I was ever so slightly short with a full piece, so I had to cut one of the spare pieces to size just to fill up the little gap here. But it was worth it, and when it was finished you couldn't actually see the join because I pushed it together and corked it with black corking. To talk very, very briefly about the corners on this beading, because it's so fragile. It's very difficult to do a 45 on it. It's not like you would with with skirting or something like that. So what I'd like to do with this stuff is I will always do one side of it straight up flat against the wall, contrary to what the professionals will tell you, and then I'll take the end of the next piece, do it at 45 on there, and then just basically take all the back off. Use a sander, use a multi-tool, whatever you've got, and just take the back off so there's nothing to catch it on the back. And what you'll find is that when that's pressed up, it should look quite nice. So yeah, it still looks pretty good. And then when I put the black cork on the top, I can just fill that tiny hole at the back there, which you won't see. And yeah, nice and smart. What do you think, Pop? You like it? Yeah? Good boy. So Rocket gave us his approval, and I'm really chuffed with that. Nice sharp lines, looks really nice and clean. So the only other job above this, of course, was to put some more slat wall. I use a slightly different colour. This is called dark oak, which is actually very similar to the walnut that I've used for the scaffboard shelving. So that just offset it a bit instead of just being black all the way around. Finally, just before the reveal, I purchased some of these lights from Temu. They were £2.36 for a 2 metre length. They plug in via USB-A, which runs on a 5-volt connection, so no electrical connection really to run on. Just plug straight into the laptop really, so when the laptop's working, these are working. When we shut down for the day, it turns the lights off. Just stuck them to the back of the desks and it looks lovely. I also used the spare one for the back of the television, as you'll see in a sec, just to add a bit more of a haze. So that's the lighting done. Well, I'm very excited because our chair has arrived. So let's get it built. So I just so happened to stumble upon this chair on eBay. It's a company called Fine Chairs, literally one word, Fine Chairs. They've got a beautiful selection and yes, this was expensive. I think I paid about £200 for it, but I absolutely love it. It's very comfortable and it does fit the aesthetic of the room. Regal Contemporary. Very, very well. That is beautiful. What do we think, wife and dog? Do you like your new chair? What do you think, pup? Oh, that poor dog. Well, here is a picture that we had made by a family member as well, which we finally put up. But the end result, guys, here it is. So there's our Regal ceiling. You've heard me use that term more times than I think I've ever used it in my life, but I'm so happy with the ceiling. Here's the radiator and everything. Here's the slat wall. These shots were taken at night, so you can really appreciate it with the filament bulbs and the little spotlights and things as well. So we've got our own little custom things on the shelves there, bit of Lego, bit of art and stuff. Here's my fancy new chair, which I absolutely love, and we've got some extra bits for the desk, including some new desk mats, which are leather ones, and this is Kerry's side, of course. Really pleased with that. And I must say that the ceiling is certainly my favourite part of this project. I really love how that turned out, especially with the spotlights for accent lighting. They look really great. So all in all, budgetary wise, I've spent about what I expected, which is about £1,000. That includes the stud wall, the insulation, plasterboard, new desks, all the lighting. So very, very pleased with how this project turned out. Proves that you can do it yourself, guys. And hopefully, if you'd like to join me on the next project coming soon.